All right, chapter 16. In this chapter is about appraisals. It's about valuation of real estate. We're going to go over the theory that appraisers go over and the theory of valuation and the theory not just appraisers, but we use to determine value of properties. So let's start off with this chapter. We're going to talk about the differences among various types of value. We're going to talk about the theory of valuation. We're going to explain the three approaches to value. And then we're going to discuss the profession of appraising and the types of appraisal licenses. Let's start off with, what is a marketplace? What's a marketplace? It's a place where goods can be bought and sold, and a price can be established, and it becomes advantageous for buyers and sellers as a place where they can all come together to trade, buy, and sell these goods. Now, real estate's an imperfect market because you can't take the goods to the people. You got to take the people out to the goods, right? So it's imperfect because of that. So there is some extra lead time in before we realize that there's a shortage of the product, or if there's too much of a product. But either way, real estate's usually a leading indicator in the economy in which way it's headed, provided there's not things out there that are manipulating that need or availability. So, in order for land to have value, it's commonly agreed that it possesses these five attributes. One, it's finite in its supply, meaning there's no new land being created. Whatever's there is here. It's physically immobile. You can't pick it up and put it in a better area. It's durable. It'll practically last forever. You could literally drop a bomb on it and it'll still be there, right? And it has its own unique location, characteristics, views, etc. It's unique in some way. And it has to be useful to people. If it's not useful to people, then why would it have value, right? So here we go. We could highlight those five common attributes. So supply and demand. Supply and demand is the amount of goods offered for sale within the marketplace at a given price during a given time period. Demand is the number of people that are ready, willing, and able to purchase it within that given time frame. So when supply increases, the prices will drop, right? If you have too much of a product, what happens? You got to move it. You got to drop the price for people to buy it, right? And when demand increases, prices will rise, especially if there's a shortage of the item. So this principle states that the value of a property increases if the supply of such property decreases and the demand for it either increases or remains constant, and the vice versa is true. That means the opposite is true. The reverse is true. That's supply and demand. So value is the monetary worth of goods, products, or services offered in the marketplace at any given time. Anytime we talk about value, we're talking about all of it. So I guess you could say value equals 100%, right? There's only 100% of a pie, right? Only 100% of the slices of the pie, right? There's no more than 100%. So it could also be described as the present worth of future benefits. I don't know who describes it like that other than the exams. Hint, hint. So value does not remain the same over time. It varies as the marketplace changes. And here's that tip that I've been giving you throughout this whole course. To sharpen your valuation skills and knowledge, you guys should take a class and regularly take them for the market updates as well and the news updates from Ottawa, that group of appraisers here in New Jersey, OTTEAU.com. These classes are taught by appraisers. They're made specifically for real estate agents. They have a CMA workshop, which I highly recommend that you take. And then there's also classes that update on the market seasonal conditions and forecasts. Those are those seasonal workshops that they have. And then when you join up for these things, they actually also, you could subscribe to their newsletters. The marketplace newsletter, which comes out every month, telling you, giving you a heads up of the different market conditions and updates on the reports, and even analysis of what they're expecting to happen in the next months and quarters to come. This could be useful information to us being in the real estate business. You know, which areas of the state are likely to heat up and slow down, and which ones are likely to slow down, and why. Well, that would be some very useful information to us, wouldn't it? Well, these guys, that's what they do. They put together reports like this. They're a group of appraisers, but they put together reports like this, not just for us in the real estate industry, but for all kinds of industries that rely on real estate as some sort of an indicator. Everything from investment groups to retirement plans to all kinds of stuff like that. Take a look. So if we go to their website here, this Ottawa group, take a look at their client list. Let's just take a look at their client list before we go to anything. Just take a look at their client list, which I think I may have even brought this up to you guys before in the past. I'm not sure. All right. You guys ever hear of any of these Fortune 500 companies which hire this same group to create reports for them? May have heard of some of those names before. How about some of these financial institutions? Maybe some of these banks or lenders. Maybe heard of some of them. JP Morgan Chase, Goldman Sachs, Federal Home Loan Mortgage Corporation, FHLMC. Who could that possibly be? We just went over it in the last chapter. Freddie Mac, right? Bank of New York, Bank of St. Louis, Unity Bank, Sovereign Bank, Wachovia, Wells Fargo, you know. Some developers that they got as clients. Maybe they act as expert witnesses for them sometimes in courts. Sometimes they do just reports for them before they get involved in projects. A lot of builders here. Some other miscellaneous groups, like investment groups that set up retirement plans and all kinds of other stuff from like Gulf Oil, Bausch and Lomb, ADP, Middlesex County, Make-A-Wish Foundation, Nestle Corporation, you know, North Jersey Oral and Maxillofacial. So even doctors there. That guy, Siemens Corporation. Hey, I used to work for them years ago in IT. Governments value them and hire them all the time. Governmental agencies and the state, even. New Jersey Natural Gas, New Jersey Transit, Office of the Attorney General. I guess there's some kind of value in what they offer in these reports, right? There's some law firms, probably had them acting as expert witnesses or doing market data and research for them. Some healthcare. They added a couple more here. Oh, they're missing a big one. They should add on another one there. Movie studios, right? They actually put a lot of guidance in there for the government, as well as the state, as well as Netflix. You know, they were talking about them, the project and the plan. They gave advice on that before they actually decided to open up that studio and buy that former military base here in New Jersey. You know, that New Jersey's, I don't know if you guys started noticing it at all or in your towns or not lately, but there have been a lot of movies being filmed here in New Jersey, a lot more than there was in the past. I mean, New Jersey always had some movie movies getting filmed here and shows, but it's been happening a lot more lately. I mean, just the other day in Rahway, you had Cameron Diaz, filming some sort of a thing. You had I've seen several things over this past weekend and this past week that were actually being filmed in New Jersey. Um, so we're becoming like the new hub as people flee California. Why could the movie industry possibly be fleeing California? What could be possibly happening over there? You know, them trying to tax the rich to death, the crime rates going through the roof. Even though these extremely wealthy folks got a lot of money, there's only so much they could take. Even though they still back all that rhetoric verbally, they walk with their feet and their actions. Look what they see, look where they go, look where they move to. You know, there's only so much they could take. They get out of town, they get out of Dodge. All right. So, oh, wait. So you guys, the thing you do and go to on their website here is that you look valuation and analysis. They got all kinds of things that they do for valuation, consulting, research, litigation, economics, stigma and benefits, case studies, the brokerage events, fall housing workshop forecast. They do private events, events and workshop support. Market Track is that news that they come out with regularly, which is very useful. I actually signed up for it. It's tax deductible. You know, Annual plans, $100 a year, $99 for the Market Pro Plus, which also allows you to take their other classes like the CMA workshops at a discount. You get discounts on their regular classes if you sign up for this stuff. Okay. Um, so Housing Track is let's see, what do they say here? They give you detailed analysis of more than 400 local housing market forecasts throughout the year, each month. So you got the market news 12 times a year. Ask Jeff, that's the owner, Jeff Ottawa. You could ask him questions like if you're having trouble with a tough CMA, he could give you some advice by consulting you by email. I guess not by phone anymore, but by email and inquiry. And you get invites to member only events and event discounts. Okay. Yeah, I signed up for this and I do get it. Where the heck is it?
Where do you go for the class, for the appraisal class?
They used to do them in hotels all the time. Now they just do it online through Zoom. So if you look at their events, you see here, we can just click on events and you can see they get their commercial real estate risk forecast, spring housing market workshop, advanced CMA housing workshop to be determined. You may want to call them up and ask them when they have an idea when that's next going to happen, that advanced CMA workshop. It's actually two classes you go for, the CMA workshop, which is the basic one, and then they give you an advanced one. They usually have them both around the same time. So you sign up for both of them. The fall housing market workshop, that's the one that's coming up late September, October. You could reach out to them about that to sign up. You can also check them out on Facebook. I follow them on Facebook for regular updates and such. Let's see. Where the heck is it? They changed their menus around a little bit. There was also another place here where you could see the workshops that they do. See, real estate valuation, brokerage. What is brokerage? Okay. Well, anyway, you could check them out. Look for their CMA workshops, Yeah, this is about them doing valuations. Okay, so yeah, go check out their CMA workshops and you sign up for their market track. Look, I'll log in. I gotta log in for this here. I paid for it and I get my Got my downloads available that they regularly update from the classes I took, the CMA workshops, the presentations. They all make them all the materials available for you. I went to the 2024 Fall Housing Workshop. That was the last one I went to. Let's see. I try to take these classes as often as I can if I'm not teaching class. Let me see. So the Market Track subscription, Access Market Track and Market Track subscription. See, Access Market Track. Here are the reports for the housing track, the market news here for September 2025. I'm going to ask Jeff. I could submit a question to him. Gives you that kind of access to an appraiser. Yeah, not a bad deal, huh? So market news. Let's see. What do they give? What do they give here? I got no affiliation with them. I just think it's a really good class to take. Okay. So we got here market analysis, the economic trends, the apartment market, office market, retail market, industrial, hospitality, mortgage rates, foreclosure trends, market snapshots. And this is what they go over in this report. I'm not going to show the report because it's copyrighted information. I don't want to get in trouble for sharing that information here right now. And then they got the housing market. Let's see. I'm in Union County, well, Union, Middlesex, Monmouth County areas. So this is for October. You see, so they update it on a regular basis, this stuff. So you could see the latest reports, update them. You could download them monthly. I subscribe to it and I pay for it. So let's take a look what's going on in Union County here, huh? The housing track analysis just for Union County. That's Jeffrey Ottawa, chief economist here. Pivoting to lower interest rates. Okay, you got a little write up there explaining what his summary is basically. And then he starts diving into the details with a little write up of what these charts mean. You know, takes into consideration unemployment rates, economic updates, interest rates versus CPI, consumer price index, housing markets. I mean, it goes over a lot of, it's really pretty in depth. You really got to read through all this to go through it and understand it, you know. And of course, it's all copyrighted here. So he gives a brief explanation of these data points now in as far as new offerings, contracts, the demand ratio, unsold inventory, the buyer seller ratio. Let's see. Okay, I'm not going to, I'll read this later. But then he gets into specifically in Union County. Unsold inventory here in yellow. Unsold inventory in 2024 was in purple. Contract sales, that's right here. And then contract sales in 2024 up here. Okay, so you get an idea by comparison by year too, what's going on. And you can see what's happening with the trends. Is it a buyer's market or a seller's market? Well, 51 out of 100 buyer-seller ratio. Month supply, still less than 2 months of supply. Anyway, it goes over all the municipalities in Union County here. Yeah, and they analyze all the different municipalities in the county. And you can compare them this year to last year. And these are pretty valuable reports for us. All right, enough about that. Moving on. So this is how your home is seen during tax time. Tax man sees it like this, and the property owner looks at their house like this. Actually, they probably look at their house more like this. Okay. When it's time to sell the house, the homeowner now sees their house like this. The real estate agent like this, the buyer like this, and the appraiser like this. That's a little bit more accurate. So they say value can be described as the present worth of future benefits arising from the ownership of real estate. This real estate values fluctuate over time. And hopefully over the years, by the time you get ready to sell it years later, it appreciated in value and you could sell it, get a profit. This is very true. In real estate, value has a different meaning depending on context. It does not rise in exact proportion to either inflation or the cost of living, and value is not the same as price, nor is it the same as cost. In real estate, cost generally relates to the past, price to the present, and value to the future. Very true. Because we help property owners when they're trying to determine the value of their property. We do a CMA for them, comparative market analysis, trying to estimate what the future value will be of a property that they could sell it for. And what they end up selling it for, that's the selling price. So the price relates to the present, what it actually is selling for. But we're trying to estimate it in the future by that value. And the value of real property does not remain constant over time. It fluctuates. Real estate market values go up, they go down. A housing shortage may increase the market value even in older homes that are less desirable houses, whereas building a better road may cause the value of a commercial property along an older road to decrease. Availability of financing also may affect the property's value. Situs is a people's preference for location, and I usually mispronounce this word. It's situs in Latin, but to remember it, I always mispronounced it as situs. Once you find that perfect location where you want to build your house, you say, we're going to sit us right here, right? So what are the three major factors affecting value? Location, and oh yeah, what was that last one? Location, right? So here's a picture from the Oklahoma land rush, back when the United States used to give land away, you just needed to claim it. I know. Everybody says that nobody had the chance to own real estate, Well, you did. Here we have a movie, Far and Away, with Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman, that actually has a scene based on this picture. It was, I think that was the first movie that they met in, and that's where they eventually got married. They hooked up and got married, I think, on this movie from Far and Away. And it's based on this photo here, one of the pivotal scenes within that movie. Instead of talking about it, I'm going to give myself a little bit of rest here, and I'll let this video that I made with a little AI voiceover do the talking for me.
The Homestead Act became law in 1862 when it was signed by President Abraham Lincoln. U.S. citizens could get 160 acres of unoccupied land west of the Mississippi River and east of the Rocky Mountains. They could keep it if they lived on the land for 5 years and made improvements to the land. Around 50,000 people lined up to claim around 2 million acres of prime land. At high noon, they were allowed to enter the area and claim the land. This is an actual photo from that day courtesy of the McClenny Family Picture Album. Homesteading was a great opportunity for many people, especially immigrants just moving to the United States. Anyone who was over 21 years old could own land. This included former slaves, immigrants, and single women. Some people snuck onto the land early and hid in order to lay claim to the best areas of land first. These people were nicknamed Sooners. Today, the mascot for the University of Oklahoma is the Sooner. Around 10,000 homesteaders settled around the area that is today Oklahoma City. The next day, April 23, 1889, the city was established with a population of over 10,000 people. It would later become the capital of the state of Oklahoma. Interesting facts about the Homestead Act and the land rush. Northerners wanted the land to be developed by small farmers rather than the large plantation owners from the South. They were afraid the plantation owners would use slaves to farm the land. There was an $18 fee to file the application to get a plot of land. Later Homestead Acts allowed for 320 acres in areas for dry land farming and 640 acres for ranching. By 1934, 270 million acres of land had been given away by the United States government. Homesteading ended in 1976, except in Alaska where it ended in 1986. In the book Little House on the Prairie, Laura Ingalls' dad claims a homestead in Kansas. The following is a reenactment of the Oklahoma land rush that happened on April 22, 1889. The movie is called Far and Away, featuring Nicole Kidman and Tom Cruise. Thanks for
Yeah, there you go. So,
watching.
little information there about situs. You know, people's preference for location. That is the situs. We're going to sit us right here. Now, don't you find that little interesting tidbit there that in Oklahoma, they actually named their mascot the Sooners after a bunch of cheaters? The ones that snuck out there to claim the best pieces of land. You figure with all this cancel culture that's going on these days, you know, they would at least cancel the cheaters, the ones that snuck on the land and stole it. Instead, they got that as their mascot, a cheater. We call them the Sooners. Guess they're proud of that somehow. Anyway, there are 4 economic characteristics to value. Dust, demand. That's a need or desire by someone who could afford it and that's willing to buy the land. Utility, serving a human need or desire. Scarcity means that it's limited in its supply. And transferability, that the ownership can be easily transferred from one person to another. Without having these 4 economic characteristics, once again, land will not have value. But how could this be on a question on exam possibly? Well, let's see. Which one of these 4 economic characteristics to value would apply to this scenario I'm about to paint to you? There's a builder that just built 500 new homes in an area. And I would like to get I would like to buy a piece of land if I could get a permit to put up a combination laundromat convenience store. Which one of these 4 economic characteristics to value would apply to my situation?
Utility?
Yeah, serving a human need or desire. You got 500 new homes in the area. People are going to need a laundromat, maybe a convenience store nearby, right? So yeah, that utility would be to serve that human need or desire for these things that are important elements in that area. Exactly. Okay. What is an appraisal? Well, it's an unbiased estimate or opinion of value that's based on supportable evidence using approved methods by someone who is licensed, which we call an appraiser. So an appraiser or appraising requires licensing. And an appraiser is an independent person. They don't work for the lender. The fee is paid by the borrower. The lender selects them, and they're trained to provide that unbiased estimate of value based on supportable evidence using methods and theory that is common in the trade. Okay, so let's highlight on page 307 there. Appraisal is an estimate of market value. An appraisal is an estimate or opinion of value based on supportable evidence and approved methods. An appraiser is an independent person trained to provide an unbiased estimate or opinion of value based on supportable evidence. So this is right under the title market value here. Everybody got that? So when it comes to an appraiser's license, there are 4 types of licenses for an appraiser. You got an apprentice trainee, a licensed residential appraiser, a certified residential appraiser, and a certified general appraiser. So you start off as an apprentice trainee by taking a 90-hour class in appraisal study. Let me remind you, you guys are here taking a 75-hour course in various topics. They're taking a 90-hour class on just evaluation of properties. And then they have to take and pass an exam to become an apprentice trainee. So you're a little more than a gopher trying to break into the business, right? You know what a gopher is, right? When you work for someone and they're like, go for this, go for that. you're a low-level peon, basically, at that point. But that's, hey, you got to start somewhere. And then you graduate to become a licensed residential appraiser after you take another 150-hour class and have 2,000 hours of experience in no fewer than 12 months working as an apprentice trainee. And then you become a licensed residential appraiser who is limited to appraising only residential properties valued up to $1 million. Now, if you want to value properties over $1 million, you have to become a certified appraiser. The applicant for to become a certified residential appraiser has to have a degree, an associate's degree or higher. Let's stop right there. A degree in what? Gender studies? See, they don't really specify. This is one of those arbitrary requirements after the mortgage market meltdown and everything that some politician put into place just so they could say, and I fought for a more stringent requirement after the mortgage meltdowns and those appraisers were appraising properties at higher values. Yeah, but they were using supportable evidence to support their valuations. It wasn't like they pulled numbers out of thin air. So this is basically one of those nonsense requirements because it would be different if they said you needed an associate's degree in something specific, but they don't. So applicants without a degree can substitute at least 21 semester credits in English, economics, math, business, or law courses. See, that's what the associate's degree should be in. So the student must also complete an additional 200 hours in approved appraisal courses and have 2,500 hours of experience in a period of at least 2 years, 24 months. So a certified residential appraiser has no limitation on the value of residential 1 to 4 family residences that they could appraise. or zone properties that they could assess. Now, in order to become a certified general appraiser, the student must have a bachelor's degree or higher in what? But an applicant without a degree can substitute 30 semester credits in courses mentioned above, as well as in 2 elective courses in accounting, geography, AG economics, business management, or real estate. In addition, 300 hours of approved appraisal courses are required, and an apprenticeship of 3,000 hours of experience in a period of 2.5 years or more. At least 1,500 of those hours should be spent on valuing non-residential properties. So, unlike residential appraisers, certified general appraisers have no monetary caps or limitations on the types of properties they can appraise. In every case, the required course of study must include a 15-hour national USPAP course. USPAP stands for Uniform Standards of National Appraisal Practice, of Professional Appraisal Practice. So the real estate appraiser's license law requires that individuals who wish to be licensed or certified as appraisers must undergo a criminal background history check as well. Well, kind of, sort of, with the change in the laws recently, they didn't really update this as much to reflect that, you got to follow that whole background check like you do with tenants. Now, real estate agents must be members of NAR, and appraisers become members of MAI, the member of the Appraisal Institute. NAR members must take a Realtor's Code of Ethics training class every 3 years. Members of MAI have to take a 15-hour USPAP course every 2. So for a better understanding, what NAR is to us as real estate licensees, MAI is to appraisers. And what the Code of Ethics class is to us, USPAP is to appraisers. As long as you know MAI and USPAP has something to do with appraisers, when you get it on state exam, you'll get it right. That's my understanding and how it was explained to me by some students. So let me back up and ask you, what kind of license is required to do an appraisal?
Depends if it's under 1 million or over 1 million.
Listen carefully. What kind of license is required to do an appraisal? An appraiser's license, silly. It was a general question. That's one of those trick questions that they could give you. I didn't get into specifics on anything. See, that's the thing. We get trapped in this hyper focused. I'm studying for this exam. There's these different types of licenses. I know that for this type and this type, you could only do this and that. See, you're getting caught up in the details. When you're reading the question, have the open mind and then try to analyze what it's asking of you before you start focusing in on the hyper, because then you put on them blinders and you're only looking at the what I just taught you. It's just more of a general question that they asked. What kind of license is required to do an appraisal? An appraiser's license. Now, if I asked you what kind of license is required to appraise a commercial property, you would say
Certified
certified what?
commercial, a general appraiser.
Certified general appraiser. Okay. Now, what if I told you what kind of license is required to appraise a residential property valued at $1.5 million?
Residential appraiser.
Certified residential appraiser or certified general appraiser?
Yes.
All right. Let me also give you a little insight here. Who can do an appraisal on commercial properties? certified general appraiser. Now, certified residential appraisers, they can also do appraisals on commercial property. So can a licensed residential appraiser, as long as they're working under a certified general appraiser. Okay, because only a certified general appraiser can do those. But if they're working under look, what's required to become a certified general appraiser? You have to have 3,000 hours of experience over 2.5 years, with at least 1,500 of those hours spent on non-residential properties. Well, a certified residential appraiser or any of these other ones can't do non-commercial properties unless they're working under a certified general appraiser, and then they can. That's how it works. That's how you get that experience. You got to work under somebody at every stage of these licenses. You know, even when you become a certified residential appraiser, well, you're still under a certified general appraiser. So the only way that you could achieve becoming a certified general appraiser is you need to suck it up and work under a certified general appraiser for a while. So I put together this slide for you. It doesn't have like all the details of all those little classes and stuff, but then again, you don't need to study and remember all that. You do need to know MAI and USPAP. An apprentice trainee, you start out as, then you become a licensed residential appraiser who can only appraise residential properties up to $1 million. You can become a certified residential appraiser who can appraise residential properties with no monetary caps on value, and can appraise commercial property, but only under the supervision of a certified general appraiser. And then you can become a certified general appraiser that can appraise any property with no monetary caps on values of those properties. And it doesn't matter what type of appraiser license you have. If you can do appraisals on FHA loans, here, I'm going to throw this in here on my slide, but we haven't highlighted it anywhere in the book yet, is you need to have FHA loans require appraisers to complete a special designation class certification class to do appraisals on those FHA loans. If you want more information about becoming an appraiser, you could look to the new njconsumeraffairs.gov/REA, real estate appraising. They're based on Halsey Street there in Newark. Okay, anyone want to snap a picture of this before I change the slide, or you're new? Okay. So what is market value? Market value is the price that a ready, willing, and able buyer who's not forced to buy will pay a seller who is not forced to sell. It's the most probable price that a property will bring. It's based on supportable evidence. Payment has to be made in cash or its equivalent, like a mortgage loan. And it has to have had reasonable length of time of exposure in the open marketplace. And both the buyer and seller should be acting without undue pressure. Both parties must be well informed of the property's assets, defects, and potential. How could you value a property if you don't know what its problems are, what its defects are, or what its potential is? And the valuation is an estimate of value by a real estate licensee or a licensed appraiser. It can help determine market value. Market value assumes an arm's length transaction. There's a new term. What does that mean? I know I've had people ask about this arm's length transaction, where it says in the book, it's a transaction between relative strangers. I've had people say, how could you be relatives and strangers? And I'm like, no. You're relatively strangers to one another, meaning there's an arm's length between us. That means that we're not that close. So an arm's length transaction is a transaction between people who are relatively strangers to one another. They're not close. They're not that close to each other. They're trying to do the best for themselves. So here's some examples that I put here of what is not considered an arm's length transaction. A brother sells his home to his sister. Let's just pretend there's no family drama or any scenarios like that. What are the odds, you love your sister. What are the odds you give your sister a break on the price when you sell her your house? Pretty good. So it's not an arm's length transaction, because an arm's length transaction is one where a seller's trying to get the most money possible and the buyer's trying to get it as cheap as possible. That's an arm's length transaction. Each party trying to do the best for themselves. Otherwise, it's not an arm's length transaction, and an appraiser cannot use that as a comp when determining the value of other properties, because there was a factor that's not normal there, that played a role in the pricing of that property. Okay, the brother gave a break on the price to his sister, so that cannot be used as a comparable to determine the value of other properties. The relationship of the parties is an outside factor or a force that affects the value. The brother's probably going to give his sister a break on the price, so it's not an accurate reflection of the value of the property. So let's highlight here those things on page 307 about market value, arm's length transaction, and market price, which we didn't get into. In a perfect world, the market value and the market price are one and the same. The market value is an estimate or opinion of value based on supportable evidence. In a perfect world, the market value and the market price are one and the same. The market price is the selling price. It's what the property actually sells for. So if you gave an accurate description of the market value, hopefully it should sell for that same price, right? It is windy outside. I don't know about by you guys, but it is windy. All I hear is that wind whipping around outside. Last night it was raining really hard and wind was whipping too. Everybody got that? Looks like you're all pretty calm right now. Okay, so everybody has it. All right. So cost relates to the past, price relates to the present, value relates to the future. And I think we read that somewhere in the book earlier in this chapter, or was that towards the last chapter? Well, either way, we read that somewhere. So market value is an estimate based on an analysis of comparable sales. So it's based on solid data, the evidence of recently sold homes, similar in size, style, location, amenity, condition, and age to the subject property. So we use that to determine the market value, to calculate the projected sales price in the future. The market price is the selling price. In a perfect world, that market value and the market price are one and the same. It's what the property actually sells for. It's the eventual selling price. Now, cost has little to do with value. It has more to do with value when it's new construction, but still, even then, it has less to do with the value. I could give you an example where I had a new builder who he was literally a new construction builder. He started his own construction company now, and he tried to build a expensive home in an area where there's not expensive homes. And he ended up, his business ended up going out of business on the very first house that he built, that first house project, due to a lot of factors. So the costs that he had into it had little to do with the price. Um, you could uh, you could put a lot of money into something. It doesn't mean you're going to get it all back. Like we looked up the price of an in-ground swimming pool, what the average price of an in-ground swimming pool was. Remember that? We looked it up, and does it increase the value of the home, an in-ground swimming pool? Yes. But are you going to get back anywhere near what it cost you to install it? No. um, so cost has little to do with the value. So cost is the total fee to construct or make improvements. It has little to do with the current value because cost relates to the past value, how much it cost you to build something. Buyers don't care what the improvements costed you. They care about what the current value is of the property, what it's worth now. And not all improvements will pay for themselves. So cost does not equal market value. It has little to do with it. The highest and best use is the most profitable use or use that'll be most in demand in the reasonably near future. You'll need to know that for exams, what a highest and best use is. A lot of questions from this chapter on exams. So a lot of these terms in the theory, you need to understand. You'll get a lot of these terms and definitions on exam from this chapter, in addition to the math that we're going to get into later. Now, amenity is a tangible or intangible benefit to the property, like clean air, a nice view, convenience features like pools, jacuzzis, heated floors, a heated toilet seat, a bidet, high-end appliances, custom features. These are all examples of amenities. That's what an amenity is. A tangible or intangible benefit to the property. Now, substitution is a value that's set by the cost of purchasing a similar substitute property. What does that mean? I'll give you a breakdown on the next slide. It's basically, though, if you have two homes with the same location and attributes, the less expensive one sells first because no one will pay more if the same can be had for less. Would you agree on that? So, well, maybe not the next slide. The slide after the highlighted slide will have the explanation of the breakdown of that. So do these highlights on page 308, but also right in the margin there, cost relates to the past, price relates to the present, value relates to the future. Let me know when you guys got it all done so I know when to move on.
Yeah.
Everybody else good too? All right. So here is the theory of substitution. If you have three homes that are exactly the same size, style, location, amenity, age, condition, location, they're all corner properties, everything. They're exactly the same. The only difference is price. Which one would you buy?
One.
Why?
It's cheaper.
Nobody will pay more when the same can be had for less, right?
Yeah.
So that is the theory of substitution. But guess what? You're not the only one that thought that, so someone beat you to it. Now, which one would you buy?
Two.
Okay, so theory of substitution says that the cost of purchasing one property will drive up the price, basically. Okay, that's also kind of the segue to supply and demand, right? Because now somebody bought that second property, they beat you out to that one too. Now this last one, there's only one left. You think this one's going to sell for 310, or you think it's going to sell for more? Because the demand is still there for these properties, but the supply is diminishing. This is how we get to bidding wars. So this property will probably sell for way more than 310, because that's how we get into bidding wars, and the supply and demand. That's how it works. So supply and demand is the value of the property increases if the supply decreases, and the demand either increases or remains constant, and vice versa. Conformity tends to stabilize values in neighborhoods better. Non-conforming structures don't maintain their value. It never pays to have the best house in the neighborhood. You'll never get your money back. Right? Having the mansion, the big house in the middle class neighborhood, you'll never get your money back for it. There's not going to be a demand for that there. It doesn't maintain its value as well. Those non-conforming houses that do not conform to the other structures in the neighborhood, they simply do not maintain value better. Regression. The theory of regression is values drop when the neighborhood around you falls apart or homes aren't being maintained. The same can be had for progress or progression, right? With both of these theories, like if progression is if all the homes around you are getting built up and turned into McMansions, is that going to affect the value of your home that you never touched or did a single repair to in your life, and it's actually even starting to crumble and fall apart? Is it going to affect the value of your home if the whole neighborhood around you is getting built up?
Yeah, it's worth more.
Yeah. Even though your property's falling apart. Well, because regression and progression work like this. You ever hear that theory where all ships rise with the tide and all ships fall with the tide? It's the same kind of a visualization that I could give you as far as values go. Now, when it comes to anticipation, did you guys hear what they're building down the street from me over here? That's anticipation. All right, they're not building anything down the street. I just made that up. That's anticipation, though. In anticipation of something happening, the news of something, it could affect the human psychology, the way people react. That in anticipation of something happening, of raising the value or lowering the value, that act of anticipation could affect the values of properties. And it does all the time. Whether it's industry moving in or out of the neighborhood or improvements that are proposed, market changes, etc. But that's basically gambling too, right? In anticipation of something happening, you buying or selling a property, that's based on some gambling, some level of gambling, right? It's a gamble. Look, I live in Linden. in Linden years ago, they were talking about putting an incinerator in town for the waste disposal. And they were talking about, hey, this is a state-of-the-art new technology. This incinerator is practically a zero-emission incinerator. It'll generate a lot of income for the town. Other towns, neighborings, they'll want to get rid of their garbage, and they'll pay us to take it and incinerate it. And it also generates energy, so it could lower the energy cost in the area, right? You had all these people that are like, no, incinerators, you're burning garbage. Everybody's going to be smelling the garbage, and there'll be smoke, another smokestack in the area. Nobody wants that in town. So the city of Linden still dumps their trash in a pile, okay, covers it with dirt. And that incinerator did get built, but it did not get built in Linden. It got built right on the border of Linden. Rahway decided they were going to take it and build it. And they built it right on Route 1. Anybody ever see that incinerator, or do you even realize it's there? Right on the border of Route 1 and 9 in Linden, where Linden and Rahway meet, there's actually an incinerator there. They actually had to move the highway to build it because they moved Route 1 and 9 about 150 feet so that they could build access roads for the garbage trucks and such, so that they don't go through the neighborhoods and create additional unwanted traffic and noise. They pull right off the highway into these looping roads that go right directly in and out of the incinerator complex. So they actually literally moved the highway where that hill is just before you go into Avenel. You know, that's where the incinerator is, that short area of Rahway, right next to the border of Linden, just before you get into Avenel.
Does
Yeah,
does it smell?
no, not at all. You also, you don't see any smoke ever coming out of there either. And it generates energy. It's actually it was actually one of the first of its kind. It's very effective for burning garbage and generating energy. So Rahway's been making a lot of money off of it, and they've been doing a lot of improvements in their town because of it. So Linden, stupid mistake. Instead, now they're trying to let these solar farms build solar farms on the our old waste site, and now we're paying others to take our garbage because they shut down the Linden dump site. And instead, now, the dump site, the way garbage dumps always worked is you have garbage that gets dumped, and then they cover it with layers of dirt, and then more garbage, then more layers of dirt. That's the way garbage dump sites work. And then all that stuff eventually rots and compacts, and that's the way that they work. So Linden actually shut that down, and now it is actually a solar farm. They put solar panels over there, and now the city of Linden keeps pushing solar energy from the solar farm that we're renting their land to. It's it's not good. Yeah, but Rahway made out on it. Yeah, you could see it too. Look out for it. It's actually a big white building with a huge. It's got a huge smokestack above where the incinerator is, and it's really close to the highway too. And it even has a big old plaque. I just noticed it the other day when I was stopped at a light going across underneath Route 1 and 9. You could see they got a plaque there for the name of the plant and what it actually is. And one of my cousins were actually a guy that helps build that and put it there. Or actually, he didn't build it, but he helped as a consultant with that. All right. In anticipation, values can be affected on anticipation of something happening in an area. New industry moving in or out, improvements proposed, market changes, but it's basically gambling to purchase based on the anticipation of something. Here's another example. I keep using my town as examples because we got so many that I'm familiar with. NASCAR. A lot of people don't affiliate the the town of Linden, New Jersey, and NASCAR racing. However, NASCAR actually had some of its early years rooted in Linden. The airport, Linden Airport, was actually one of the first places where they had NASCAR races. So we got some history here. A NASCAR racetrack was proposed to be built in Linden. In anticipation, people were tripping over each other to buy previously worthless wetlands, marshlands and wetlands near the proposed build site of the NASCAR racetrack, which is going to be all the way at the end of Wood Avenue, at the end at the old GAF site, and they were going to build a direct entrance to it right from the turnpike. So all this marshland and wetland between Wood Avenue and the turnpike, that's all wetlands, runoff from the Arthur Kill. You can't build on that stuff unless you really build it up and put in a lot of dirt and such. But people started tripping over each other to buy that floodplain lands over there in anticipation of a NASCAR track being built. Because anywhere in the United States where a NASCAR track is built, those towns get huge economic booms. So I even got in on the action a little bit. I didn't buy real estate over there. I just I found out. I went to the public hearings and I found out what they were going to call the racetrack. They were going to call it Liberty Speedway. So guess who's the proud owner of LibertySpeedway.com? I just bought the domain name and I was planning on selling it to them, holding it hostage and making a little money off of it. But anyway, so here's a little bit about Linden's racing history. Check this out. Speedway and roadway race history. In New Jersey, 1949 at the Linden Airport. They had the NASCAR racetrack over there where they had Grand National events. Okay, here, this was a guy, Al Keller, won the race driving a Jaguar. There he is coming over the finish line. Look at the price of that ticket, 50 cents. Ah, that's highway robbery. See what they're worth today. So here's an actual overview of all the race cars and their numbers and their drivers and what places they took with the showing of the taxiways and the actual runways of the airport in races that were held in the 1950s for NASCAR on the Linden Airport, and different flags that were drawn during the race. Here's 1954 picture. Look, the airport still looks the same there. That hangar anyway. These bleachers are no longer there. This eventually became the PAL fields, the Police Athletic League. It was a little leagues for the baseball fields for kids for years until they tore it down and they built what's now Aviation Shopping Plaza there. Yeah, Linden Airport. Look at them NASCAR race cars. It's actually stock car racing. So you basically take the cars that are stock at the time and they were racing. They soup them up a little bit and they race them. There's Bill or Keller, whatever his name is, Al Keller, and his little race car next to one of the planes there. July 25th, Sunday, July 25th, 1954. Direct from California. First time in the East. Drag races. Here's the current airport. Still the same old layout. Yeah. All right. Let's go back to the slideshow and we could see what was the plan for the racetrack there. So here we got a little write-up. This is from 2003. With the proposal from NASCAR Racing at the Meadowlands making little headway, a developer is pushing to build a racetrack in Linden in an industrial section off the New Jersey Turnpike. Liberty Speedway at Linden would include a 100,000 seat grandstand expandable to 140,000 seats, on a .92 mile speedway in accordance with NASCAR regulations. A 400,000 square foot entertainment center and 20-story hotel and conference center, said developer Morton Salkind, who has included a number of celebrities and politically connected people on the project. Among them are actor and race car driver Paul Newman, who's now departed, and race car driver Mario Andretti, and political operative James Carville, all ancient creatures now. Built significant hurdles remain. The traffic would be the only NASCAR facility in the North Jersey, New York metropolitan area, a lucrative market for a sport that's second only to football in television viewership. If the proposal sounds familiar to racing fans, it is. Salkind, former state assemblyman, submitted a similar plan last fall for the Meadowlands complex in East Rutherford. While that proposal is technically still on the table, Salkind said the Linden site has more advantages. Salkind's case was not helped by the fact that the Meadowlands Commission was more interested in a proposal submitted by an international speedway corporation that appears to be stumbling because it required hundreds of millions of dollars in state funding. Local concerns over noise from the track didn't help matters either. Salkind's racetrack, hotel, and a virtual reality entertainment center could be built on the 140-acre site off the Arthur Kill, the old GAF property at Tremley Point in Linden. He recently took his $401 million proposal to the Linden City Council, and those council members, which have wanted to see the aging industrial property redeveloped for years. The project would be privately funded and not require any subsidies from the city. In addition, the reaching an agreement on the purchase price for the Tremley Point property, there's a problem with NASCAR itself. See, the NASCAR racetrack, it's one thing to build a racetrack and have a racetrack, but in order to have a NASCAR racetrack, you need a single NASCAR race. And NASCAR said that all of their dates are already filled up. So it says they reserve dates for themselves, which they could share. They'll give us the dates happily. The closest NASCAR track to New Jersey are at Watkins Glen, Pocono Raceway, and Dover International Speedway. Unfortunately, they were unable to get NASCAR to sanction one race there. So therefore, a racetrack without a NASCAR race is simply a racetrack, and we don't need another racetrack here. So they scrapped the project in the end. Look at this person. Wouldn't a bunch of mob grave sites have moved? Yeah. So in anticipation, a lot of people bought up properties there. And at the end, their gambling did not pay off. They scrapped the project. So let's go over some more theory. Increasing and diminishing returns. Can you see the slideshow? Did I turn back to it? Yes, I did. Okay. So an example of increasing and diminishing returns is, say you buy a house and it needs a kitchen. The kitchen is unusable. It's in horrible condition. It's rat infested. It's falling apart, whatever. So it's the worst of the worst. So it's unusable. So any money you dump in to remodel that kitchen, you'll get all your money back up to a certain point. Now you start going overboard with it, so up to a certain point, you'll get all your money back in remodeling that kitchen. And then you start going overboard to the extreme kitchen makeover. Everything above that point now, all the money you put back into it for doing additional improvements, your return starts diminishing how much money you'll get back. Like all the different additional features, the soft touch drawers that open, and the 100-bottle wine cooler. That every kitchen does not need a 100-bottle wine cooler. I don't want to hear the arguments, ladies. I know I heard the arguments before. Yes, it does. I don't want to hear that. No, it don't. So you start getting it. All your money back up to a certain point, but then afterwards you start getting extreme with your kitchen makeover. So your return on that investment starts to diminish as you keep dumping more and more money in that improvement to make it nicer and nicer. Okay. That's what the theory of increasing and diminishing returns is. A contribution. Not everybody puts money back into the property. If you do, well, that's a good thing. But how are you using the money and how much are you applying to it? So contribution, if and how putting money back into the property could increase the value. Additions that increase the value and absence of any improvements may decrease the value. If you're not doing any improvements at all on the property. All right. Competition. This deals more with commercial properties. Profits attract competition, but excess profits attract ruinous competition. I'll give you one example. When I first opened my school up when I moved my school to South Plainfield, there wasn't much to eat not many places in the immediate area to eat right next to where my school was. There was a lot of warehouses and trucking places. But there was really no place to go out for lunch. You'd have to drive miles before you get to some place where you could grab a bite to eat. So then they built a Wawa and a gas station there. And they started doing killer business there with the Wawa and the sandwiches and all those things that they make. So right across the street, a McDonald's then bought a piece of property and built a McDonald's. So far, that's all that's there right now. But give it time. Anytime they build a McDonald's there somewhere, what do they usually put right next door or right down the street from it or across the street?
Burger King.
Burger King, right? Well, you know that these things are coming. They're going to come. So the competitors, they see profits there. And if there's profits there, they want their slice of the pie. So profits attract competition, but excess profits, they could attract ruinous competition where you start getting too many businesses there now. And now they're all fighting for that same amount of people that were there looking for a place to eat, breakfast and lunch, And change. Appraisers need to take that into consideration too. Nothing remains constant. Stuff changes. Changes in local market conditions, the job market, the local politics, regulations, crime rates, taxes, improvements, contamination, industry, weather, flood zones and flood zone remapping, and the local economy. These all play a role. All of these things can have changes to them and play a role in the valuation of the properties. All right, so we're done with all the theory. Now, let's get into the 3 approaches to value. So under the title, 3 approaches to value on page 310, just highlight sales comparison approach, the cost approach, and the income approach. So the sales comparison approach, also known as the comparative approach or comparison approach, it's the one that's most often used by real estate licensees. We do CMAs and BPOs using this approach to value. And appraisers also use it for residential properties mostly. Can be used for some commercial, but mostly for residential. The cost approach to value, it's used for valuing unique, special, and one-of-a-kind type properties that may not have comparable properties to compare it to, or those that generate income. And then we have the income approach to value. It's used for any property that generates income to determine the value of it. So we're going to be going over them in the next slides here. So let's highlight on page 310. In the sales comparison approach, also called the market data approach, an estimate of value is obtained by comparing the subject property, that's the one we're trying to determine the value of, with recently sold similar properties, which we'll call comps, or which is short for comparables. This approach is most often used by brokers and salespeople. We help buyers and sellers determine the value of their properties using the sales comparison approach, the CMA. We do those CMAs for them. Okay. So sales comparison approach to value, the CMA. I told you to take that CMA workshop with Ottawa Group there, or have your brokers give you training. It's best for residential property valuation. It compares the subject property to similar comparable properties, comps, that are similar in size, style, location, amenity, age, and condition that have recently sold. And they compare them to the subject property to help determine the value of what that subject property should sell for. And because not all homes are exactly the same, we're going to have to make adjustments for the differences to determine what the value of that subject property is. Now, whenever doing CMAs, you should always have a minimum of 3 comps to help determine the value. And then we're going to make adjustments to the comps because we know what they have sold for. So we're going to make adjustments pretending that if those comps were exactly like the subject property, how much would they have sold for? And now this will give us a more accurate price range for the subject property. We make adjustments for the date of the sale, because real estate markets, they're not constant. Real estate markets, they go up and they go down in value over time. So how long ago did this comp sell? We'll have to make an adjustment for time. The location should be relatively the same, but definitely in the same municipality, hopefully in the same neighborhood too. Physical features and conditions should be similar. If not, you're going to need to make adjustments. The terms and conditions of the comp property sold, know when to make adjustments for the differences. They got a little guide there below the chart on what page is that? I fell behind on turning my pages. Okay, on page 311. And on that guide, they tell you if a subject property is missing a feature or is in poorer condition than a comparable property, subtract from the value of the comparable to bring it to the same level. CBS, comp better subtract. If the subject property has a feature or is in better condition than a comparable, add to the value of the comparable. CPA, comp poorer, add. Just something else for us to remember. I like to do it this way. I'll use my hand. And I'll say, this is the property I'm trying to determine the value for. And this is the comparable property. So let's just say that these two properties are exactly the same. And the subject property, which one's the subject property? Yeah, the subject property, we'll make this one subject property, has 3 bedrooms and 2 baths. And the comparable property had 4 bedrooms and 2 baths. So the only difference is a bedroom. So it had 4 bedrooms, whereas this one has 3 bedrooms. If we determine the value, we know how much this property had sold for. So we just need to determine how much a bedroom is worth. And then we're going to subtract that value of a bedroom to bring it down to the same level. And then we subtract that value from that difference from the sale price of what we know that sold for. And that's how much that the subject property should sell for. That's the basic theory of what it is we're trying to do. Now, another way you could do this is I could do something like this. We know how much the subject property, we know that the subject property has 3 bedrooms and 2 baths. The comparable property had 4 bedrooms, so it had a feature subject property does not. To bring it to the same level as the subject property, we have to find out the value of that feature and then subtract it to bring it down to the same level. If the comparable property is missing a feature the subject property has, we would add to bring it up to the same level. You guys see what I'm doing here? With the whole idea. My idea right now is my objective here is not to teach you how much a feature costs, how much you're going to be adding, or how much you're going to be subtracting at this moment. Right now, I just want to teach you that you need to know when to add or subtract from the comparables value. Because the subject property is the one we're trying to determine the value for. We know how much the comp sold for already. So for the comp, if it has a feature subject property is missing or it's in better condition, we find out the value of that difference, and then we subtract to bring it down to the same level. If the comp is missing a feature that the subject property has or is not in as good a condition, we determine a value for that difference, and then we'll add it into the sales price to make it exactly the same as the subject property. And we already know how much the comp sold for. So make that adjustment difference by adding or subtracting, and now we know how much the subject property should go for. You guys understand what I'm trying to do here? Here. Subject property has a 1-car garage. Comparable property has a 2-car garage. We got to determine the value of each car garage. And then are we going to add to or subtract to the value that we know that the comp already sold for to bring it to the same level as the subject property? 1-car garage, 2-car garage. We got to determine a value for the difference, and then are we going to add to the comparable value or subtract to bring it to the same level?
Subtract.
Boop, subtract. There we go. You see, you could do this either with sheets of paper, or you could do this with your hands, it makes it a lot easier just to understand when do you add and when do you subtract from the comparable property. You never add or subtract from the subject property because that's the one you're trying to determine the value for. You know how much the comp already sold for. Now you're just trying to compare it to the subject and pretend that if it was exactly the same as the subject property, how much would it have sold for? Okay, so in this example here, I did something similar. I didn't like the chart that they used in the book, so I created my own chart here. All right, so the only differences that I'm putting here is, look, we got the different architectural style, but we pulled up comps that have the same architectural style. They're all Cape Cod style homes. The subject property has 4 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, and 1-car garage. The comparable property 1, comparable property 2, comparable property 3. We can see how much each one of them sold for. This one has 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, no garage. 4 bedroom, 2 bath, 1 garage. 4 bedroom, 2.5 baths, 2-car garage. So those are the only differences that we're analyzing here right now today. So I just made up numbers here, just pulled them out of thin air. A bedroom we're going to estimate is valued at $15,000. Half bedroom valued at $5,000, and the initial garage space is worth $10,000, but additional spaces cost an additional $6,000 for garage space. Okay, so just based on those differences, let's make adjustments to figure out the value of. Let's try to figure out how much this property should sell for, the subject property. So what we'll do is we'll take the comparison. First of all, the comparison property number 1 sold for $300,000. It has only 3 bedrooms where the subject property has 4. How much is a 1-bedroom worth? $15,000. So we're going to add to or subtract to the comparables value. We're going to add because it's missing a feature the subject property has. It has 2 bathrooms, whereas the subject property has 2.5. So how much is a half bath worth?
5,000.
5,000. So are we going to subtract or add to that value of this comparable?
You're gonna add.
We're going to add. And comparable property 1 that has no garage, whereas subject property has 1. So once again, we're going to add $10,000 for that. So let's add up all the adjustments. 10, 15, another 5, that's $30,000 in differences. So from the $300,000, add that $30,000 in total adjustments. That house should have sold for $330,000. So that's the first comparable. Now let's do the next one. It's also a Cape Cod style house, so you don't need to make any adjustments in value there. It has 4 bedrooms like the subject property. It has 2 baths. Subject property has 2.5. So we're going to have to see what the value of a half bath is. It's $5,000. And since it's missing that feature in the comparable, we're going to have to add it in, $5,000. And it also has a 1-car garage, so it's good there. So if we're only making adjustments for these particular differences, the total adjustment is $5,000. So this one that sold for $325 would have sold then for $330 as well. Now we take a look at comparable property 3. It sold for $335,000. It has 4 bedrooms. Subject property has 4. 2.5 baths. Subject property has 2.5. It has 2-car garage. Subject property only has 1. So we're going to add or subtract the value of one of the garage spaces of $6,000 to the value. We're going to subtract because it has an extra garage space. Now, the additional garage spaces cost less. It costs more to build an initial total structure or garage versus just adding on an additional garage space in that garage, making it bigger. Okay, so that's why the difference between an additional garage space. So we're going to subtract from this comparable's value $6,000, bringing it down to $329,000. So now we have a more accurate price range. Instead of from $300 to $335, we pretty much nailed it at about $330,000, right? $329 to $330. You see how those adjustments give us a more accurate reflection of price if you do all those adjustments? Listen, most real estate agents, they don't do this. What they'll do is they'll just take the general price range of what they sold for. They don't have the knowledge to do this, and they don't bother doing it because it's too much work. So they just take the price range here, and they ask the owner, how much you want to list it for? They're going to tell you more than this. And then you'll be like, oh, okay. And then they put it on the market, overvalued. And then it may stay on the market for a while, and its listing expires, and they never sold it. Or they may get lucky, and someone comes in, does a little lowball, and they start negotiating, and it ends up selling somewhere in between. That's the way it really works in the real world there. But how much is it actually going to sell for is going to be dependent on what the appraiser says. Right? When the appraiser comes in and the person's buying it using a loan. So that's when the real estate agent's like, we listed it for $340,000, but the appraiser came in. They said it's only worth $290,000. And you're wondering what the difference is there. Well, because the appraisers are a little more accurate in this pricing, and they do a better job than what we do. They got more experience in it. So take one of these classes. This will help you out a little bit in valuing it better and making these adjustments. You put the extra little work in there too. And then you could also start to build up something that's called the list to sale price ratio. And by looking at a list to sale price ratio, you could determine if that agent does a good job in valuing properties, if they know how to value them or not. If they routinely overprice properties and then they sell for way less than what they're being, the asking price is, that they don't know what the hell they're doing when it comes to valuing properties. All right, but this is how you do it. Everybody understand what I was doing here? Everybody following along and got the basic of when to add or subtract from a comp's value?
Yeah.
Okay. Everybody good? Coletta, you okay? You're looking at me a little weird. You good? All right. All right. So once again, cost relates to the past, price relates to the present, and value relates to the future. So, which is the only one that really matters? The appraiser, the real estate agent, or the seller's opinion here?
The seller, because they're the one that at the end of the day have final word to list, but appraiser when it comes to closing.
The seller's opinion don't amount to squat. Because often your job as a real estate professional is to talk this insane person with unrealistic expectations of the value of their property down to planet Earth. It is a monumentally tough job to do. And sometimes you can't do it. So you have to take it at whatever price that they put it at, knowing that it is overpriced and you're probably not going to sell it. So why take the listing and put all the time and effort into it? Why?
You never know.
Well,
Somebody might be.
I know it's not going to sell for this price because I know it's overpriced because there's no comps that justify the seller's asking price. No way in hell this person is operating in a different hemisphere, different planet. So why would I take that listing? Even though I tried my best to talk them down to earth, why would I still take that listing?
You tell them if it doesn't sell in a certain amount of time, you have to reduce to what was
You could
originally.
try. That's a good effort right there. Is that say, okay, we could try it for a little higher, but listen, if you don't get any written offers within the first 2 weeks, I highly suggest that we lower the price here. And then can we have the pre-written de-escalation of price? No. Now what? Now what are you gonna do? You still take the listing or are you gonna deny it? Come on, I'm on the spot. You know, you're on the spot right now. I'm the seller here. We're trying to do a little role play. No, I'm not lowering the price. Your job is to sell it. Well, you don't know how to do your job?
You go back to the buyer and tell them to come in for
Buyer, hold on a second. You're just talking
the
about
seller.
getting the listing to try to market it to find a buyer.
Well, you go back to the seller, be like, you want to, I don't know, give them options.
Sometimes
Show them
people
different
do not work
listings.
in reality, and no matter what you say, no matter any evidence that you put forth before them, they're still going to say, "I want more." Is it
Just like,
worth your time and effort to take this listing still?
no.
Are you going to deny the listing?
Well, you try it for a certain amount of time, and if it doesn't sell, you put a time limit to the contract.
Listen, take the listing. Try to talk them down to reality. I'm with you on everything that you were saying here. You're on the right track. You've learned a lot of what I've explained to you too, because I noticed you're mentioning a lot of those things, those tactics. Try to negotiate them. Sure, we'll take the listing at a higher price, and then we'll pre-write a de-escalation in the price at a certain time frame. All that. Good job. Good job. But sometimes people aren't working in reality, and they just say no, 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 and it's frustrating. It's really frustrating. This job is not as cake as everybody thinks. Okay, like that goof video I showed you at the end of the last chapter, where the girl pulls out at the end of that video, she pulls out all those books. You know, when her friend is telling her, "Oh, your job is so easy. You got so much free time. You could do whatever you want." You know, you get to. I'm a people person, and that's a great job. You know. Yeah, well, you're gonna learn to hate people, some people. So, but you can't take any of this stuff personal. There's just some people that are just little wacky, right? So take the listing anyway. First, try all the tactics that you were explaining to me. And if they keep pushing back like I did, and I'm coming off like a jerk off, well, a lot of them may too. Okay. I'm trying to just prepare you a little bit here. Still take the listing, knowing that property is not going to sell. You know it. You know it's not going to sell. It's way overpriced. There's no way in hell it's going to sell. Okay. So why take the listing? Because you'll get some inquiries from buyers. They're not going to buy that house because they know it's overpriced. But you could be prepared and know that the house is overpriced. Do some research for similar homes in the proper price range that those buyers may be looking in. So they're calling up about a house in this price range up here, but then they come and they see this house in this price range, but they're asking this amount for it. So they're not expecting to see this crappy thing asking at this price. They want to see this nicer house, okay? Because that's what they were calling about. Have some of those nicer houses prepared so that you could say, okay, well, I see you're not interested in this property when you show it to them. However, I pulled up a couple of others that may be of interest to you that I could show you in this area. Would you like me to call up and see if I could set up an appointment and so that we could go take a look at one of these houses? You could turn them into clients still, those potential buyers, and show them something else. Okay? Don't turn them away. You could get business out of it still. That's why you take a listing that may be overpriced when somebody's not operating in reality and you know it's not going to sell. If you think the owner is not going to be a major pain in the ass as well, that's another factor you need to factor into. Is the juice worth the squeeze on me taking this overpriced listing? Okay. I have turned down listings before because I saw that the owner was just going to be a major pain in my ass. And ironically, it was a guy that was in South Plainfield, where my school's located now. There were five homes that were constructed brand new 9 years ago on this one block. Okay. And there was the guy that I made an appointment with to try to get the listing from. I estimated that the value of his house was $340,000 back then. Okay. And he was like, I want 380. I'm like, okay. I ran a couple of comps for you, and I found a couple of homes in the neighborhood, but the best one was your neighbor. Your neighbor's house just sold within the last 30 days, and their house was built by the same builder as you in the same year. It's an exact duplicate of your house. You don't get better comps like that. You usually don't get comps like that are where you don't need to make any adjustments. So I was like, their house just sold for $340,000. Why is yours worth $380,000? Did you do any improvements to it that could justify that cost difference? I just want $380,000. Okay, well, have you done any improvements to the house or changes that would justify your house being at a higher value? Because most people that come in to buy a house, they're going to need to get a mortgage loan, and an appraiser is going to have to value that property, and no bank, no lender is going to lend more money than an appraiser says that it's worth, because that house is going to serve as collateral for the loan if they should ever default on the loan. So we need to justify why your house is worth more than the other one. And the guy's like, well, when I first bought the property, I didn't like that cheap builder's carpet, so I got some newer carpet. And I didn't like the sinks that they had, so or the toilets, so I replaced the sinks and the toilets in the 3 bathrooms. And I was like, okay, well, is there something special about those sinks or toilets that makes them fancier or worth more? Well, I just like the style better. Okay. As a buyer, would you expect a bathroom to have a sink and a toilet in it? Okay, well then you changing out the sink and toilet and there not being any special unique things about it does not justify a difference in making it worth more because it's a different sink or toilet than the builder put in. And your house is mostly hardwood floors. You only had carpet runners up the stairs and in certain rooms upstairs. So it's not like it was that much carpet. Plus, keep in mind, this house was built 9 years ago. So you replaced that carpet 9 years ago. It's 9 years old now. Probably can be replaced again. So I'm not seeing a justification in $40,000 difference in value. Is there? I need you to help me help you try to justify a difference in the value. And the guy's like, well, that's not my problem. It's yours. That's your job. How would you respond to that? I'll tell you the way I responded. I said, well, with all due respect, I'm a professional. I sell a lot of houses and I base the sales value based on supportable evidence, these comparables, just like an appraiser would. And my job is, to try to get you as much money as possible for your home, but I need to be able to justify those increases in value. And you're not giving me anything to work with here. And my job is to work within the realms of reality, and you're not helping me out to do that. There's no justification I could come up with within the realms of reality that would justify this price difference, other than the fact that you want more for it. I was like, I was breaking down. I mean, it was only $40,000 difference. I mean, still a lot of money, but it was $40,000 difference. So I was like, you really should price it according to what the neighbor's got over there. What's the reason why you want more for the house? Because that's how much I want. And he actually did this. That's how much I want. He actually did that. He crossed his arms, kind of like I'm a genie, that's how much I want. And I was like, Keep in mind, I never spoke to him yet about how much I'm charging him on commissions. This is how much money he wanted in his pocket. We never even got into the talk about what I'm charging him for commission for the listing price, right? And the guy was already talking about where am I going to be advertising his property. And I showed him all these different areas that I'm advertising it. And he's like, well, aren't you going to put it in the New York Times? Really? You know how expensive that is to advertise it in the New? Why am I going to be putting it in the New York Times to advertise your property in South Plainfield? It's not exactly like the train from New York City direct comes to South Plainfield, but anyway, yeah, this is what I'm thinking. I'm not saying that to him. This is what I'm thinking. So, yeah, I'm getting into this conversation with him, and I'm asking him to help justify the price. We can't get to a meeting of the minds on that. And so at the end of the day, he's talking to me and talking and talking and won't let me get a word in edgewise. I'm ready to say, okay, I'll take the listing at your overpriced amount, but I wasn't even able to do that because he started talking and talking and talking about this is how much money he wants. It's my job to justify it. I want you to advertise it in the New York Times and this and that and the other thing. So I'm looking at the guy. I do this. I just sit back in the chair and I kind of look at him and I'm thinking, and he's talking and talking, and I'm trying to look for a gap of free space so that I could say something. Can't get a word in edgewise. So I had enough. I just looked at him and I was like, well, I started putting all my papers in my folder, closed the folder. I took out 2 business cards and I start standing up and handing him the business cards as I'm standing up, and he's sitting down and he's still talking and talking and talking. And he's wondering now, I could see the befuddled look on his face. He's like, why are you standing up? And I was like handing him my business cards, which he grabbed. And then I was like, it was nice to meet you here today, but I could see you're not ready to sell your home yet. When you're ready to take the advice of somebody who does this for a living. This is my profession. I know how to value properties. I know what's going to sell and what's not. We didn't even start discussing my commission, and already you're arguing on this price that you want $380,000 in your pocket. So I guess my commission would have had to gone on top of that. And let's just say I charge them 6% commission. How much would that be then? Anybody know? How much would the house need to be, what I had to list it for, if I was going to get 6% commission out of them? Anybody know how to do that? If it was $380,000 that he wanted, and I was going to charge 6% commission.
402-800.
I would have to sell the house for $404,255. The way that you come up with that calculation is if you want to build in the percentage to the sale price, however you came up with that number, what did you do? You just added 6% to it? Try subtracting 6% and see if you get 380,000. You're not. Do this instead. 380,000 divided by 94%. That's how you build the 6% into the sale price.
You said divided by 94%.
Yeah, because 6%, 100% minus 6% is 94%. So take the home value that the homeowner wants, which is 380,000, and divide it by 94%. And now what do you get?
404,255.
Okay, now subtract 6%. And what do you get?
Mm,
380.
oh, yeah.
On the button, right? Exactly. That's the way to do the math exactly. That if you're going to build in something into the price, and then you don't just add 6% because now it's 6% is the higher value. Now you're going to try to take 6% from that higher value, and it's not going to work out the same. So this is the way that you build in that 6%. It's based off of 100% when we talk about value, right? Everything's based on 100%. So we subtract the amount of commission you want to add in. You want to build onto the price, which is 6%. That leaves you 94%. So you divide that into the sales price of whatever the amount is they want, and that's how you get that higher amount. Anyway, so that was before my commission. So if I built that commission in at 6%, I would have had to have got that listing for $404,000 when I know the property's only valued at $340,000. You think I'd ever sell it? $340,000 versus $404,000? That house will never sell. So I just stood up, gave him my business cards, said, thank you. This is a polite way to say F you, okay? You stand up, you give them the business card, you say, it was a pleasure meeting you today. I could see you're not ready to sell your home because you're not ready to take the advice of a professional that sells a lot of real estate. So I know what I'm doing here. When you're ready to sell your home and take the advice of a professional, I'm not in the business of just taking listings that I know I can't sell. So I don't want to waste your time here today, and I don't want to waste mine. So here's my business cards. I hope you do give me a call when you're ready to sell. Have a good day. And I walked out. That was my way of telling them to go, stick it where the sun don't shine in a pleasant way. Okay. Needless to say, I never got a call back from him, but I kept tabs on that listing. And another agent got the listing. And guess how much she listed it for? It was over $400,000. So I already knew that 380, he wasn't going to budge on that. So the commission had to have been added into it. And that's exactly what the lady did that took the listing. And she got that listing for 1 year and did not sell and did not budge in the price the whole year. So Now the real estate market started to decline. And now this guy, I could tell, he thought that he's getting slipped now. Doesn't want to take any more of those 1 year listing from agents. So he took a 3 month listing from an agent and at the same price, didn't sell. Took another 3 month listing from a different real estate agent now at a little bit lower price, a little bit lower, didn't sell. Now he gets another 6 month listing from another real estate agent. I guess they talked him into that. We're not doing this 3 month bullshit. So they took a 6 month listing from him, and they got the listing at around 360, I think it was. Remember, the price I said was 340. This was a year and a half ago, and market values are starting to drop. 340. 360, it was not selling. They lowered the price again to around 340, did not sell. They lowered it again. Guess how much the house eventually sold before that, the end of that? So 2 years later, the house sold 2 years later. How much did it sell for? Can anybody guess? Take a wild guess. What do you think in a declining market where the value was initially at 340 and he had it there at over 400, and then slowly towards the end was lowering the price? 2 years
300?
later.
Oh, 280?
It sold for about 280 or 285, somewhere in that range. 2 years later. Time is money too, right? And a declining real estate market. So all that guy's arguments, if he listed it at the right price with me, I could have gotten him 340 for his house at that time. But because he was cheap, and for whatever reason he had this imaginary number in his head that I could not talk him down to reality, cost him 2 years of trying to sell it, and cost him a lot of money. Cost him what? $50,000, $60,000. Okay, so yeah, the sellers, it don't matter what the seller wants. We need to ask, but it don't matter. The appraiser's number is the only one that really matters, because most people are going to come in there with needing to get a loan and not have all the cash. Oh, that's the thing. When I said that to him, he was like, well, then we need to find the right buyer. I'm like, what do you mean the right buyer? Well, a cash buyer, because an appraiser, like you said, isn't there isn't going to value it at that. So I got into that argument with him too. I said, do you think people that have this kind of cash laying around, people with $380,000 of cash laying around, would you agree with me that they're generally not stupid people? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, well, then why would they knowingly pay more than what an appraiser is going to tell them that it's worth? Because they're still going to get an appraisal done. And he's like, well, that's not my problem. That's yours. Your job is to sell. I said, reality, remember? I work in reality. You can have fun with this sometimes too, and just screw with people that you know it's not going nowhere. Anyway, so the real estate agent, we determine the value using the CMA. We're usually somewhere in between what the seller wants and what the appraiser wants. So we need to talk them down to that level there a little bit. But really, ultimately, the seller's the one who sets the asking price with our guidance and direction we give by doing that CMA. And you got to do a good job in it. And sometimes even when you have all the supporting evidence and you trying to convince that homeowner, it's like banging your head against a brick wall. Sometimes you leave there and you leave with a headache, So you should have your aspirin handy. All right. Let's go over the cost approach to value is based on the theory of substitution. So an appraisal by summation using the cost approach to value, special purpose, unique and one-of-a-kind properties, they may not have comparables or generate income in a normal fashion, like schools, churches, and libraries, city hall even, or a custom, unique, one-of-a-kind home. How do you determine the value of those things? Not many churches coming on the market for sale that you could use as comps, right? They don't generate income like most businesses do. So how do you determine the value of a church or a library or a school, or if City Hall came up for sale. Now, you may be thinking, well, that's a ridiculous notion. City Hall is not going to come up for sale. Really? It did in Rahway. So it does happen. But how do you value these properties? I'm going to hire an appraiser. Well, you could try to do that, but really they should be paying for it. Or you'd use the appraisal by summation or the cost approach, which actually we never do this. An appraiser really does. But you need to know how to do it for exams, and you need to know the process. So that's what I'm going to teach you right now. The cost approach is also known as the appraisal by summation. Summation, you're summing it up. There's some math involved there. So the first step is the appraiser has to estimate the value of the land that building is sitting on today in this neighborhood if it were put to its highest and best use. What is a highest and best use? That's some of the theory that we already went over. It's the most valuable use that a property can be adapted to or will be in demand in the reasonably near future. So you determine how much the land that this building is sitting on today is worth put to its highest and best use. Then you estimate the cost to construct that building, with all of its improvements, running the gas lines, water, sewer, constructing the building itself. And you'd have to, how do you determine the value of constructing a building? Well, it depends. Are you constructing a building that's exactly the same as what's sitting there now, or just something similar that serves the same purpose? We have something called replacement cost and reproduction costs approaches to value. So let's see which one we don't have the knowledge to do this. This is why we never do this appraisal approach of the value. So let's first do these highlights. Do these highlights here. And then we'll go over each one of them in just a moment.